We're live today's episode of Not Safe for Wonks. It is the OG me, Rachel. I am here with good boy and best friend in the universe, Nate, who has been calling for several months now that Josh Collins is going to lose his election. Nate, how did you know?
I don't think I have any extremely unique knowledge in dealing with this. I think there were a lot of people that pretty much expected that he was going to lose. Really, what it came down to was the very simple fact that there's no evidence that he was canvassing. There's no evidence that he was making like phone calls or really doing any kind of outreach to people like in his actual district because there's definitely something to be said about left-wing candidates having this sort of at-large appeal to people outside of their district for fundraising purposes. For example, people from all over the country will donate to AOC, will donate to Rashida, will donate to, or even just during the presidential primaries, people out of the state would donate to Bernie, and he'd go and use the money to in a targeted campaign in Iowa, in New Hampshire, in other like very early on states.
Right.
But what Josh for Congress was doing was campaigning at people that did not live in his district at all, and was just running this posting operation.
Which was very effective in terms of
he was
clout
good at
building, to be
posting.
fair.
He I'll give him that. He takes a mean talk, but there was really no clear evidence or anything to even suggest that he was actually doing any outreach in his campaign. And what it came down to really was I'll give the rundown really quick for people for the. Can I talk about the Essential Workers Party ballot line?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah, so he dramatically deactivated his Twitter account a while ago when I was first on the pod to talk about this, and he announced that he was running on his own new party, the Essential Workers Party ballot line, and everybody freaked out because they were like, essentially, if I don't have the tweet on me, but he said something to this effect. But people were saying, why would you do this? Because when you run for office as a Democrat, you need to be a Democrat. Hi, Brandon.
Never mind. I was gonna type just hanging, and then you guys are like, "You're in here now."
We're bringing Brandon in.
All right.
How do you? There we go. Okay.
All right.
Tell us your stories, Nate.
All right. Well, when you run for office as a Democrat, like if you're using applications like Vote Builder, like Van, like any of these sort of digital tools that people typically use for outreach, for canvassing, for getting sort of the voter data, a lot of that stuff is actually mediated through the Democratic Party. And so, there's a lot to be said about being able to run independent candidates or like, socialists on the Democratic Party ballot line because they have very minimal party discipline and minimal ways. If you just decide you're going to run for office and you're not taking corporate money, there's not much of a way for the Democrats to control you. One thing they do control is stuff like the voter data and all these sort of Democrat affiliated apps, because if you wanted to say, like a group like Van will say, the only criteria for us like letting you use the Van or anything else is that you don't run against a Democrat in a general election. And so like that's generally the criteria that's used. But when you say when you're functionally the same as like a progressive challenger, but then you just declare your own ballot line like Josh for Congress did, you're effectively swearing off all this voter outreach technology. So just it's like it's tools for like sending out mass emails or like cutting lists for people to go and get a list of voters that are on a certain number of blocks. They can go and knock all the doors. And so when it didn't even matter actually, because the ballot line doesn't even matter at all in this race, because it was like a jungle primary where anybody could run on any ballot line and the top two people would go into a runoff. So it doesn't even matter. But just totally symbolically said, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat. I'm on the Essential Workers Party ballot line. So everybody was like, why would you do this? Because you're just are you trying to sabotage your campaign? Are you trying to get yourself kicked off of all this essential campaign outreach? And the answer was like, oh, well, we're not actually using any of these tools anyway.
And that was when you were like, oh, you're fucked.
That's
Yeah,
when it was like, okay, this person is literally doing no canvassing. They're literally not calling anybody at all. There are no stakes in this election. Like, and I am not at all a wonk about campaign finance data, but I remember looking at the Heidi Sloan campaign and just comparing like the expenditures for Heidi Sloan versus the expenditures versus Josh for Congress. And I forget what the percents were, but there was a substantially higher percentage of Josh for Congress's donations and expenditures were being spent on just salaries for organizers than Heidi Sloan's, which even Heidi Sloan was like an entirely, mass movement, volunteer driven campaign. They didn't end up winning, but they, were competitive and they had like 35% of the vote. And they had a bunch of field organizers that they were paying to organize canvassing, but they still had to pay for stuff like event space, like for actual, mailers, for flyers and literature to have canvassing. And so the fact that Josh for Congress was spending significantly more money on salary, but like no real event costs or real like materials costs for the campaign, to me was my uneducated noob investigation of the campaign finance. And it was like, maybe this guy's really only paying people to tweet. And
I mean, obviously, we are all in favor of paying people for their labor, and definitely Brandon and I know it's not just tweeting, right? Social media campaigns are incredible amounts of work and all of that shit. So I don't want to like be unfair in this.
Charlie will come back, and Charlie is a big Josh for Collins person. And will be like, you guys are just not understanding how important it was to do the list building.
Oh, I didn't know Charlie was super into Josh. I should have invited her on.
Charlie's Rose Caucus.
Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie's in Rose Caucus. But anyway, but yeah, there were just a couple of things that were really baffling to me. The essential workers thing, I was like, essential workers is a meme. Like, that's like naming yourself the Harambe Party. Like, it was a complete corporate created. Like, no, but like,
honestly, Harambe Party might have gone over better.
But like, in terms of like, it was a news cycle. Like, think of how often y'all hear the phrase essential workers now, as opposed to like when it was earlier in the news cycle and it was like, these are our brave American heroes. And now it's like, forget about that. We've got to get through this. And a lot of people are going to kick the bucket, and that's just how it's going to go. You don't hear the phrase essential workers in the media now at all. Literally, someone else ran on the Congress Sucks party, and they probably had zero name ID, and people were just like, Congress does suck. I hit the button. In terms of like the campaign finance, I think that there are people on the internet that were way too hysterical about like spending. You're out of control. You're buying a keyboard. What's the deal with the keyboard? Like, ultimately, who cares? But if all of your money for your campaign is going into labor, you can say, well, we are paying people properly. But like, unfortunately, like, just the tweeting is not the whole thing that goes into that. The tweeting and the list building is not the entire apex of the campaign. You've got to do printing. You've got to do calling. You've got to do, and a lot of that is like stuff that is based on recruiting people to do it for free, because like, unless you're Mike Bloomberg, you literally can't pay people to do that much work. And also, if you're paying them, they're not going to do a good job. See Mike Bloomberg. So yeah, you have to have a certain amount of buy-in.
I feel like it was less because he was paying them and more because it was Mike Bloomberg, but that's just a hunch.
That's also true. I'm sure that if Bernie was paying like literally every volunteer, they'd be like, all right, cool.
This is awesome. Great. Yeah. So I think that there's a big aspect of this, like, I'm kind of the opinion that he's a bit of a grifter, and I have been this whole time. And like, that's kind of a controversial take, I know. But for me, it's like, he should have known better, right? Like, there's an aspect of this that is like, you should have known better than this. Like,
I think that his ideology determined that he run this way. Like, and we have like, it's funny, we're all like
on Twitter only. I mean, that's like,
well, wait. So we literally have editorials that have been written in DSA platforms that are like, this is the way that a person should run for office. They should have no association or affiliation with the Democratic Party. They should say, I am an independent candidate for labor. How are you going to get the labor actual endorsements? I don't know. But if you're working class and you're honest with people, like Josh Collins ran out of a lot of people's playbooks of how a campaign that is a pure intellectual campaign should be run. Now, in terms of like the balance of the labor versus the flyering versus that other stuff, like that's a whole different strategic discussion.
Right. Well, and that's the part that I'm saying I think he should have known better. Like, I'm not objecting to him saying he's running as like an independent or a people's candidate or even an essential workers party candidate.
Sure.
Like, my objection is not his branding. My objection is people were telling him, like, you need to be canvassing, you need to be calling people, you need to be actually like sending out flyers. Like, people were telling him this, and he was just running around like, yeah, like
but he was very open about like, your money is going to give me and my friends salaries to posts. Like, he literally was like, labor is so important to me and my friends and my team, and we are the labor of the campaign. And so your money so like, if you're here and you're looking at the results and you're like, what happened? He literally told you very upfront that like, the money is going to give me money. You know,
I feel like he wasn't quite that direct about it. Like, it's like the same way that, like, you know, Democrats will say like whatever shady shit, like a public option, and what they really mean is we're going to keep having private healthcare. Fuck you, you know.
Nate, this isn't DSA. You don't stack. You just yell. This is a talk show.
Yeah.
You have takes and you just go,
right, I'm going to assert myself in the tyranny of structuralists. Right. I'm just going to yell until I have the floor. Well, one thing about the way that he sort of presented himself as, you know, if you look at his endorsements, you know, when you can say that you're a labor candidate, but it doesn't really matter if you say that you represent labor unless you actually do have labor unions endorsing you. And so, like, if you look at his, you know, the endorsements website for like Heidi Sloan, for example, a model candidate, in my opinion, might not have been the most strategic place to run. You can argue that, but I mean, it was a very well-run campaign. And they got endorsed by the American Federation of Teachers. They got endorsed by the AFL-CIO. They got endorsed by other labor groups and progressive groups, where the progressive groups actually had like volunteers and like things that could be contributed towards the campaign. And it was about, you know, the actual material reality of these are groups that have money or they have people that can help make this campaign be successful and contribute towards the actual outreach. Whereas if you look at Josh for Congress's Twitter bio, he's endorsed by Rose Caucus, Socialist Alternative, Climate Strike Washington, Our Revolution, the Green Party, and the Washington Progressive Party, and Youth Climate Action Team. Like, these are all just sort of like aesthetic labels of like different, you know, brands of leftism. Socialist Alternative is probably the one with the most meat on it. In the Washington context, but you know, I don't think that Socialist Alternative was actually going out there to knock doors for him in the way that they were knocking doors for Shabba for city council. They probably just endorsed him to get access to his email list and those rent strike petitions that they ended up co-sponsoring, which got a lot of signatures. Apparently,
we can talk about the rent strike later.
Yeah, he did this whole rent strike thing.
That infuriated me.
Millions of people to sign on. Literally, apparently, like 1 to 2 million people signed on to this thing, and then did nothing to organize.
Yeah, well, and
people.
There was kind of a watershed moment for me in particular after that call, where I was talking with Brandon. I'm going to let Brandon tell the story, but the story that Brandon told me after this meeting was what really solidified for me. Like, I don't trust this person at all. I don't think this person has good intentions. Brandon, go ahead.
Before I go into my infuriating rent strike story, Nate, can you talk a little bit about labor endorsements? Like, what's the difference between a Beth Doglio or a Heidi Sloan? Like, what do you need to provide when you are running that makes it easier for you to get those specific crucial endorsements in the movement?
Yeah, this is something where I am not an expert, so I'm not going to talk extensively on it.
This is a podcast. This is
But to put out my hot takes on it, it's that, you know, Jobs for Congress ran as like an IWW guy, like, and was running on and put together this 100-page Google Doc of like all these like just this Christmas list of ideas of everything that could be good in the world, like abolishing the military, and the CIA was in there, I think. A lot of stuff where it's like, cool, that sounds cool. Maybe it's good, but it's like just because you have left-wing positions doesn't mean that the masses of millions of people are going to think that you're credible. And the difference with somebody like Heidi or somebody like a lot of the progressive candidates that have been running is that they have actually been able to demonstrate that they can mobilize people and get people on board with the campaign. Like, for example, Vincent Fort ran for mayor. It wasn't successful, but he got, I think, like 27 or 29
Right.
labor union locals in Atlanta to endorse him, and they, donated money to the campaign. The Georgia Federation of Teachers just like, they just hand out $1,000 checks to people that they endorse in Georgia. Like they, I was looking at a primary where they had the Georgia Federation of Teachers gave $1,000 to two different candidates that were running against each other in the Democratic primary,
We're
because
not
I guess they
watching.
just wanted to support both, just wanted to be on everybody's, good side. Literally playing both sides there. But now they do that. And if you have like the relationships with labor and, there's we talk about not wanting to be accountable to big donors or accountable to, capitalists or the people behind the Democratic Party machine. But we actually do want to be accountable to the labor movement. We actually do want to have an electoral program that's like merged with like the trade union movement. And I think what we should be doing is trying to build out these socialist candidacies and left-wing like electoral candidates that are like enmeshed with the labor movement. And what we want to do is like show people that we are credible organizers who like can run competitive campaigns and make that pitch to like labor and to other groups as well that are like, progressive aligned, that like if you just throw us like $1,000 and like slap your name on this, like, and a couple other people do, like we will actually, be a real like fighter for you once in office, and we will be an asset to what you're already trying to do. Versus, the way that Josh for Congress was rolled out, I don't think anybody had, I don't think there would any reasonable labor organizer in Washington would see his like TikTok campaign and be like, this is something we should really throw $1,000 at. Like,
Right.
like people aren't gonna think that's legitimate. People aren't gonna see any benefit into participating that, because I mean he wasn't canvassing, like he wasn't running a credible campaign.
Right.
So like you need to actually a lot of it's about the relationships or whatever, but you need to actually be trying to win, and you need to be a campaign that could theoretically win for people to even have any interest in like buying into something. And that's why Bernie, for example, was so successful comparatively to historical third party candidates, because he presented like a way forward that was both really radical and left wing, but also to a large layer of people he looked like he could have won, and he looked like he was it was feasible. The betting markets had him at a 40 or 50% chance of winning at one point. Like he looked like he could actually win, and so people are willing to throw down on stuff that they think they can win. People are not willing to go out on a limb for some TikTok user just because he has some good ideas. Like that's sort of what it comes down to, and that's why you can get all the different fringe sectarian like left-wing groups in a room that you want. You can get the Green Party, PSL, like World Workers Party, Socialist Alternative, you can get this whole constellation of every left-wing position under the sun into one room and make your united front. But if you don't actually have canvassers, and if you don't have the ability to turn people out, then you're never going to win. And the only way to actually get the volunteers that you need, to get the donations that you need, the institutional support that you need to actually run a competitive campaign, is through the masses of normie progressives and normie socialists who don't really know what the word socialism means, but think that all the things we talk about are cool. Like,
Mhm.
that's fine. That's good. Like, those are the people that we want to be engaging with. Like,
Right. We want to be using
yeah,
existing infrastructure.
yeah.
We don't want to be reinventing the wheel with every campaign. And I think
Okay.
that's very important and very true.
Well, it's not
And
necessarily like existing infrastructure, because most of the electoral infrastructure that we're talking about is like brand new, but it's rather like, the people that exist, we
right, well,
shouldn't
and that's what I'm
necessarily be
talking
oriented
about.
to them. Yeah.
Like infrastructure qua existing social networks, right? Because like all of the technology we put around this is really just about faster ways of leveraging the social networks we already have. But there is absolutely no replacement for that, like, in-person conversation, or at the very least a phone call. I know we can't do in person because there's a fucking plague happening that will never stop. But like that actual direct one-on-one interaction with another human being, there is no substitute for that. You cannot tweet better than that. Like, and the question then becomes, how do we mobilize as many people as possible to affect those conversations, to make them happen, to get people in the community engaged and giving a shit? How do we make ourselves visible as part of a conversation with the community itself? And I think that is something that Josh fundamentally misunderstood the entire time.
Okay, so my rage-inducing story, and like honestly, if y'all watch the show, I don't get pissed off at things. Usually, like if somebody does something and it doesn't work, there's usually like a reason. But some people can have a reason that is so ass backwards that it just like infuriates you. And this was like a situation where I was very pissed off. So everywhere on Twitter, this fucking rent strike shit was going on. Just this whole fucking here's the post, and it was like a little astroturf, but like we do astroturf sometimes. That's just how you do activism. So it was just like, oh, we found a street corner and there's graffiti that says rent strike, and weird that I was there coincidentally to capture this picture. So ching. And there was just a lot of graphics being made and mailing lists being made, and please spread the word via retweet. And if you've got 70,000 followers, you can like spread the word via retweet pretty easily. Just talking about like the inhumanity of the situation. It was written in these very desperate terms of like, people are not going to be able to survive. What's going to happen to them at the end of this month? Hashtag rent strike. We're going to have a call. Get on the call and we're going to figure this out. So I, with all of the Rose Caucus controversy, I was like, this could be like a thing. So I'm going to sign up for it. I'm going to listen. So they give the presentation, and it's like a presentation for like the Rose Caucus. Basically, it's like, we need radical ideas in here, and here's our platform, and da 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 da. And so they started taking questions, and like predictably, the questions are like, I'm going to lose my home in 3 weeks. Right? Because that was your, like, as somebody who works in advertising, that was your messaging. Like, that was the message that you put out, was like, this is a desperate situation and we need to desperately act together to save these people. So the people that needed saving obviously flooded the fucking line. It was like, so I don't have money for rent. What do I do? So obviously, like, despite whatever you're going to say on Twitter, like, you're saying, well, you've got to organize. You've got to you got to talk to your neighbors, was like the kind of stuff that was being said. So you got to talk to your neighbors and find people who can afford to pay but don't want to, in order to be in a block with you. And this is like stuff that you would learn at like a 101, like tenant organizing kind of deal. The problem is, like, you didn't advertise tenant organizing 101. You advertised, you can't pay your rent, come here and we'll help you. So they were saying like, well, how do I plug into you? How do I get help? And it was like, well, we're on the other side of the country. It's a national organization. You've got to find local organizations. And I'm like, you had all month, you were posting all month. So what are your coalitions with these local organizations? And so they were like, well, you find those organizations and point them out to us, and we will work with them if they adopt our platform. Which is so fucking baffling, especially because like before the call started, I was talking to Charlie and we butted heads on this. I'm like, sorry, we already have fucking local organizations in Atlanta that are working on this, and it's not like you know who the hell they are. And Charlie was like, well, this isn't like a list building thing. And Charlie should actually physically be here. Yeah, like, without like getting into like personal Discord discussions they're on our Discord, but um, just like it's not like an appropriate pitch because you're asking really desperate people to come into your door, and you are coming from the position of we're in Seattle and we've got a platform about abolishing the CIA, and you have to join in on that before we send a mailing that is in your favor, which is like the exact fucking backwards way to do some shit. You should probably figure out who you want to work with, what they've got going on. Start with figure out ways to support them. They could have easily just had like a page with like a fucking map, and if you're in this state, hover over it. Here are the organizations that are doing this, and it still would have. I still personally would not have felt comfortable running a rent strike action that asks for desperate people to call me because I don't actually have. But whatever. Even if you were to do that, you should still say, well, here's the local network that you could plug into, and here's what we're attempting to do nationally, yada, yada, yada. And it would be like, but I would still be like, it's the left wing project, and we're all just trying to do what we can. I just feel like that we'll find an organization, we'll support it if it adopts our platform, cross the line from like incompetence to malfeasance. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And that is my infuriating rent strike story. It's like, I don't know what the fuck's going on over there, but I really do not like it.
Weren't they
But that's the thing. I'm gonna hop stack here, Rachel. If that's okay.
You can't say
you don't have stack on the air.
Don't say stack. We've got to be.
Okay, fine.
I live here. This is my pod. You're gonna talk first.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, no, I mean that's the thing. All these people like got on because they wanted to actually get help with tenant organizing, and then they got screwed over. Just like there's all these people that thought, oh wow, there's this new AOC, and he's a trucker, and he's gonna TikTok his way to victory, and they just got fooled into donating to this guy. Like it's literally a thing where people have in the past couple of months like been in an actual like desperate situation where we're actually in this political crisis, and people with the utmost confidence step in and say, I am like your savior. Like I will be, the next AOC. I will be elected to Congress. I am the face of the revolution. Or like I declare general strike. I declare rent strike. Like people just with confidence say, we're doing it. We're making a mass movement. We're like, and it is malfeasance at that point when you make these sort of like extremely overconfident claims and declarations on behalf of millions of people. Like and basically lead people on into thinking that there's more organization than there is. And that's why I think that the Rose Caucus and basically every project that they've been engaged with has just been so like utterly destructive to the left, because not only like is it this sort of paper tiger and like fake project where everybody thinks that they're going to get this organizing training, and then they hear nothing, and they're just told to find some local organization when they've been maybe waiting a week to get on this call. Like that's a week they could have spent like talking to their neighbors. That's a week they could have spent like looking for other local organizations. They didn't have to wait a week or however long to get on a call to be told to go somewhere else. Or just like anything where like literally this guy is running for Congress and saying, I am campaigning, give me your money so that like and like if you give me your money it'll help the socialist cause because I'll use the money on campaigning, and then just turns around and uses it for posting. Like that is just defrauding people essentially. Like you are just stealing $300,000 almost of money from working class people, like ordinary people who are just chipping in $10-20 because they want to help this abstract project that they think will help them. And it is a fraud. And even if he's stupid and all these people are just morons and they're doing it by accident, like it discredits the people that are actually seriously trying to do this, because people won't trust us. People won't trust the next AOC, the next actual credible candidate, because they'll be like, oh, I don't know, this might be another one of those Josh for Congress scenarios. Like it does delegitimize us, and it does like undermine our ability to take actual collective efforts when you have these sort of like fringe groups go out and mislead people.
Okay,
I think that's a valid point. And I don't think Josh is like an inherently evil person, right?
No, he's an op. He's a fucking op.
You think? You think he's
No,
like
he's not.
literally a plant?
He's just a bad poster.
Yeah, no, I mean, I
Yeah.
think he's really good at posting. I think like he genuinely wants to solve the problem, and I think, as is often the case with white dudes doing things, he was destroyed by his own hubris, you know? But like there were also some like genuinely concerning things that did happen with the Rose Caucus. And obviously I don't hate everybody in the Rose Caucus, you know, but a lot of the leadership there did some shit that was just really questionable. You know, they were embroiled in some controversies that were really concerning. They made some comments like while they forgot that they were still on the air, you know, about like misappropriating money that were joking but were definitely in bad taste. Like they never came across like they were really taking it seriously. And I'm all about having fun with politics. Obviously, I'm here right now, but
Well, let's think of something positive.
okay.
So two positive things that we can discuss. Number one, what should the rest of us learn from Josh Collins? Is there anything?
You know, I
You
think
can't
this is
post your way into success.
I was going to say that. And I think there's something to be said too for like a friend of the show who we love and adore, you know, Nabila Islam, who's incredible, you know, but ultimately because of the plague, you know, her campaign was no longer able to do the kind of canvassing they needed to do, you know. And I mean, she didn't like get completely slammed in her election the way Josh did, but in spite of like all of the work she was putting into it, like once she wasn't able to canvass, she just got knocked out from under her. She got her legs knocked out from under her.
I don't know. I'm gonna go on record here, and I think she did kind of get slammed out. You know, friend of the pod and all. She's cool, but I think it was a similar situation where you know, there wasn't really the volunteer program or like the you know the mass movement happening that was sort of promised or alleged, like with the aesthetic that it was presented with. I think it actually was like a similar situation. I don't think it was nearly to the scale. Like, I mean, they were still actually canvassing. And they were
exactly.
Like,
it's similar in as much as if you looked exclusively at her social media presence and efficacy, you would think she was going to do way better than she did. And in reality, you know, she was an upstart person who it was her first like time running for office, and she had some experience with the DNC before and working on campaigns, but like she couldn't get the canvassing done. And I think that's like a big takeaway from Josh's campaign and from a lot of other, you know, less successful campaigns is like it really is about like knocking on doors and talking directly to people. And I think that's very important.
Another takeaway is that like a lot of these people are running for the first time. We're all talking about like Cori Bush and we're whooping and hollering for her, but like this is her second time running. And she's been in that neighborhood for basically 4 years straight running for this office. So it was just like lost last time. Okay, we got to do this again and just re-spool the shit and start it from scratch for the next time. And there's a lot of people who like lost last time and they're like, all right, we got to re-spool and start this again. Another positive note that we can kind of quickly take on. Let's just say you're waking up in Josh Collins's body. You're very stressed out. You're very tired. You busted your ass slaving over a hot keyboard for months to get less than 1%. The entire internet is dunking on you right now. What do you need to do to modify yourself, whether you're going to run for Congress again or whether you want to be a movement person? How do you have a large mailing list and a lot of followers. How do you go from that to from influencer to activist, I guess?
I have an idea. Start repping Not Safe for Wonks and build the media empire. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, if you want my actual answer, I hope he puts out some heartfelt medium.com essay about like how they're so sorry and how they fucked it all up and did terribly because they got wrapped up in this whole posting game, and how it's a life lesson and how to not run a campaign, and that everybody should do what AOC and Rashida and Corey do instead. Like, and also probably, you know, this is definitely a good example for why it's a bad idea to just think that you can start a third party just with the snap of your fingers, like it's a branding exercise.
Right.
Like, I don't think that anybody should ever like hire anybody that worked on the Josh for Congress campaign to like work on a campaign. Like, I don't think that. I think that if you were endorsed by Rose Caucus this cycle, like that should probably be considered like kiss of death. Like that should be like a huge red flag. Like for a DSA chapter looking at whether or not to endorse a candidate. If they're involved in Rose Caucus, maybe don't touch that. Because the thing is, like, this is a movement of millions of people. Like, you don't need to run for office or like be a campaign staffer to be involved. And so, like, I don't think there's any real scenario in which like Josh for Congress or any of his staff are like, yeah, we fucked it up this time, but we're changing direction and we're going to do it again next year. Like, maybe they can just, I mean, we don't like, they don't have to be canceled or horribly condemned, but like, people should just recognize that this is a bad strategy, and they should probably own up to the fact that they did like squander a lot of people's money.
Well, I wanna push back a little bit on your idea that like everybody in Rose Caucus, the Rose Caucus branding should specifically be a red flag, because some of the campaigns did actually do cool things. Like Asher Knuckles' campaign was really impressive, and he got within a hair of winning in Georgia.
Yeah, I think he was the best candidate out of the entire.
He was, and I mean, he's great. Yeah. Like, friend of the pod, right? But like,
Jason I think Paul also did okay, and he was a Rose Caucus guy. And he obviously had a lot more on the ground.
Right. Well, and I think it would be good to sort of talk about the things that went right in those campaigns, and I don't think it was because of their affiliation with Rose Caucus. I think those campaigns in particular did a lot better for themselves, Yeah. But I do want to push back on this idea that like if somebody's involved with Rose Caucus at all, you should immediately be like, not sure about you, because some of them are really great. I don't think the people who were like really running the show were as good. But I mean, there are good people who were in Rose Caucus, and I stand or whatever.
Okay, whatever.
I'll hand it to like two of them.
I am fair and balanced.
All right.
I am Fox News. I am doing the most.
We're gonna clip that out. We're gonna clip that as a clip.
I mean, maybe there's two of them that are okay, but like,
yeah, overall,
I got flamed by multiple candidates, like in my personal Twitter account, for criticizing Josh for Congress and being like, I think he's probably gonna lose.
Right.
Like, just saying, Jason Call was in my replies being like, hey, he's running a hard campaign, sir. You better watch your tone criticizing this man. He's putting it all on the line to run for Congress via TikTok, and then he got 0.9%. Like, I don't like that. Doesn't inspire much confidence. I do think people should be skeptical.
And I think a lot of people joined and dropped out. There are a lot of people who were in Rose Caucus for a week, but that's a whole different story. But there are a lot of people who were like here, and then they were like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, I think there was one of the Chicago DSA candidates for Congress,
Anthony Clark, who was also
on he got on it for like a day, and then like
I think
just violently dropped off. I think like Chicago DSA people like called him up and were like, yo man, I think might not be a good idea.
I also think Lauren Ashcraft was also, I think, we don't have to go back and do all of this recounting, but yeah, I think Lauren was in the Rose Caucus for like a week and was like, okay.
Suffice it to say, the people from the Rose Caucus who've been on the show, we stand because we 100% all of the time stand all of our guests ever. And have never disagreed with a guest on anything ever. Never will, especially not publicly. No. And we're completely fair and unbiased.
Right.
And, no, I mean, I do think though, we've had sort of a grudge against Josh in particular because he did kind of, snub us as well.
Well, I don't know if he snubbed us. I think Josh was incredibly like Josh was one of the like in the early days of the show.
What was he with?
I don't know how he was posting.
That's what the conversation has been about, Brandon.
To be fair, I often can't do things because I'm posting. But no, but yeah, it was like he agreed to come on, and then like just stuff happened. Like it just happens with certain people. They can't always do it. Nate, what do you got?
This is a part where I jump in and say that y'all are blindsided by your personal biases of interviewing these people, and I have the principled take.
That is true. It's true.
Yeah, nothing like the level unemotional opinion of a white man to tell us what needs to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for your service. That's right. Hell yeah.
I'm just saying, if you look at the spreadsheets and you follow my calculator,
look at the spreadsheets, baby.
Well, I will say
the fundamentals.
I will say one of the things I know for a fact you are very good at is mobilizing people. And I did want to try and get a little talk in about that, just as like a quick, like how to make this a little educational for people. If you are trying to mobilize a community, what should you do?
What you should not do is just have no relationship with anybody and not know anybody and just show up at their door and be like, hey, do this thing for me, put the sign in your door. Like you can't just go in there swinging within it, not necessarily in the context of like a an electoral campaign, but just with anything. Like the key thing, like if you want to have a mass movement, what it comes down to is organizing, not mobilizing. Like it's essentially about the two components are like an organization or any kind of campaign or whatever is like a muscle where you need to actually there's growing the muscle itself, and then there's extending and using the muscle to accomplish something. And you can't just go in to go to anybody and just say we're going to accomplish this thing. Like you need to actually get buy-in, and you need to get people participating. You need to give people their designated roles or jobs. You need to give people ownership over this project. You need to like start having meetings, get to know people, like see what's actually motivating people. If somebody really cares about graphic design, put them in charge of something that they care about. If somebody really cares about some other issue, put them in charge of something that they care about. And think of it more about like people have these inherent like wants and needs or interests, and finding ways to facilitate that and enable what they want to do within the framework of like an electoral campaign or like an organization, like a political organization. And you need to find ways to empower and involve people. And that doesn't come down to if you show up to a bunch of people and just proclaim to them that you have the correct ideas, and they need to follow your lead and just go do something like hey everybody, hashtag local elections matter, there's a DA election, you all better go canvass tomorrow. That doesn't work that well at actually getting people to do the thing that you want them to do. Like it is more of a long-term thing of like persuasion. And so like with a campaign for office, like you can't just you don't start by saying I'm running for Congress and then just make your website on yourself and then just start posting like you see other people post and just waiting for those likes to fall, like to just fall in. Like
you're 2022, you should probably start right now, which is like going to community meetings. And hearing what's already up and looking for like small things that you can do. And really, even if you're not doing anything, like literally just your people seeing your face goes such a long way of like, oh yeah, I know him. He's always at the thing. So just like start by, you got, 2 years, start by just being the person that's always at the thing. It only takes you a couple hours, and then you just know everybody. And that process, like, if somebody sees your face like 3 times, then that goes a much longer way than like you've got a website and it's cool and I've got Twitter followers. Start winning those local relationships and start talking to people. If go ahead.
Yeah, you've got to like if you want to in the theoretical example of like running for office, like running for office is not at all the only thing. Like you could be organizing your workplace. Like you can't just go in there and just start yelling at people in your office like we're having a strike vote next week, like we're unionizing, like can you do it? Like you need to go to people like in a softer way and be like hey, what are your grievances in the workplace, like how do you think we can handle this, and basically assemble this team and map out like who's interested in a union, or like even who has just grievances, and like round up people that all have like sort of the same ideas, same feelings, and then call a meeting, get everybody together and be like, well, it seems like everything we all want can be accomplished through the union. That's similar to like if you want to run for office, you got to get people that think it's a good idea and get a bunch of your friends, a bunch of people that are comrades in other organizations, get them together and be like, hey, I think that I should run for office, and I think it would benefit all these organizations and everybody involved, and I think y'all would be interested. Like you need to get a team together, and you need to get everybody on board with like this idea of the project, and you can't just before doing that, you can't just say I'm going to run for office and I'm
Right.
going to be the next
And
AOC.
before you can even ask these organizations to help you run for office, you have to have relationships with them. Like, there is absolutely no substitute for community relationship building.
And all that stuff is open to the public. Like, it's not like it's a gateway that you cannot, you lowly peasant cannot enter. There are two things that I want to add on to that point, which is number one, you can agitate. When you talk about sharing your grievances, you can agitate in an active way. Like, there's nothing wrong with walking up to somebody and be like, have you seen this shit? This shit sucks. And then they're like, yeah, man, this is terrible. So like when you're talking about like, how do we start engaging people? Like, it can be just direct physical agitation. It can also be like platform building, and you're bringing people on and you're talking to them in interview format. And we can think of a lot of people in Atlanta who are not DSA people, but have a lot of relationships just because like they do interviews and they talk to people, and you know, that's their kind of way towards building. It's also worth noting, in addition to being able to actively agitate, running for office is not the only way to do it. We've talked about that as well. And you can kind of start your own campaign affirmatively. And there are lots of people who will just jump onto something that a person starts if it looks like you know what you're doing. And that is a scale that you can fake it. Like if Josh for Congress starts like a local campaign, he can say, hey, I ran for Congress. It was a disaster, but I do have national megaphone, and people and local groups will grab onto that and be like, yeah, man, we need some clout. Okay, let's do it. And anybody can do
well,
that.
He's shown demonstrably that he can fundraise.
Yeah.
And that's not nothing.
That's not nothing. It's not
yeah.
nothing. Yeah.
And you know, when all else fails, start a podcast.
Start a podcast, Josh. Think about
Josh, come on the pod. Josh, you can win our hearts back. Josh Collins, you can win our love and support and unconditional, unquestioning support with zero criticism of you ever again if you just come on the podcast once.
Josh is looking at our views. It's like, man.
He's like, no.
I'm good. I'm on TikTok. Microsoft presents TikTok. I'll be fine. Thoughts on DSA San Fran sticking a knife in Shaheed? I got a take. Yeah, they should. Yeah, get out of there. He's not. First of all, he's not going to beat Pelosi anyway, and never was. And this whole thing was just like raging at the heavens. There's a totally different, like Eric Cantor, like a few years ago, took some stances that actively pissed off and alienated his entire district. He was a scalp that could be collected. Nancy Pelosi is very unpopular nationally. Are there issues where she has enraged her district? That's like a single issue that now she's the lead, she can't go anywhere in San Francisco? No. I always thought that the Shaheed Buttar thing was chaotic anyway. I mean, it's fine. We're all angry at Pelosi. And, you know, if somebody runs and they don't win, it's fine because you have potentially like a movement leader or whatever, or somebody with a platform. And that's fine. But also, like, should the DSA San Francisco, like, after doing all of this stuff, calling liberals hypocrites over Tara Reid, can you really in good conscience be like, oh, this person is not credible. We've got to step back. We've got to take a breath on this. Unless you have like some really clear evidence that's like abundant. And also because Shaheed's response was not perfect at all either.
Yeah, I mean, he showed his whole ass. It's sex pest stuff. We don't want to fuck around with it. Like sex discrimination, pest abuse, whatever. Like, just don't.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Nate, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I have not read all the Medium.com posts, so I'm not going to comment on like the details of it. But it's like, you know, I would assume that DSA San Francisco members like actually know the people that are working on the campaign and actually have like the social connections and probably know stuff that's not on the internet right now. Like a lot of this stuff, if it does come down to like he said, she said type stuff, like if the DSA San Francisco membership and the chapter officers like know the people that are working on the campaign, that are the volunteers, and everybody seems to be saying the same thing about some guy, like, and then they took the very strong, like large public action of like rescinding an endorsement, like that is a big thing. Like I don't interpret that as like, oh, it's a wishy-washy, unclear situation and DSASF was just trying to be safe. Like I interpret that as like, this guy is not to be touched at all. Like I trust the judgment of the DSA San Francisco chapter on this one. Like I'm going to take their word for it.
Right.
Like I mean, imagine if like I would treat and basically any DSA chapter like that, like if a huge group of like 100 people in a meeting like vote to rescind their endorsement, like there's probably people on the ground that know something that you don't.
Yeah.
So I would absolutely like I would trust the DSA chapter on that one, because that's definitely something takes some deliberating on, and they probably had a whole bunch of internal discussions on it as well that we're not seeing on Twitter.
What would we three know about this?
Yeah, we three in the Atlanta chapter, which has never had drama,
Metro Atlanta chapter of
drama,
DSA, notoriously untarnished.
notoriously very fun chapter to be in that everybody loves.
We are a fun chapter.
That's the funny thing is there's 95% of us that kick ass, and then there's this like 5% of people that are just terrible and bootlickers and like want to be loud about it.
Rachel, I don't know if you can include yourself and us in that one.
But anyway,
I'm not currently listen.
All right, we're gonna take this off the pod.
But listen, so I've got to actually step off. I don't know if we're about to wrap, but we have at 6. If you follow Metro ATL DSA, we're doing a very big defunding panel discussion. And when you talk about like building relationships, doing stuff like this is part. But anyway, and also building awareness for vital campaigns. So we're going to be talking about that kind of stuff. And you're welcome to join. And I will leave you and Rachel to sign off or whatever.
Oh no, we're signing off as is. I mean, it's 51 minutes. It's a live stream.
Hey, we didn't even get to talk about animal rights, which is really the thing that I actually wanted.
I don't think there's anything to talk about. There's no substance there. So
what? Wait, I missed something. And now I have to know.
Nate was the Twitter main character.
We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it on the pod.
Oh, we're going to talk about this once.
This is something to be held in internal bulletin discussions.
All right, that's fine.
Involves a little bit of discipline.
He doesn't think animals have souls, you guys. Anyway, we're going to get out.
Oh, God. Okay. We love you. Thank you for coming back with us. We're back from break.
Yeah, that's right.
We're figuring our shit out as always. We appreciate your support. We need money. We need money in a way that Josh Collins does not. If you would like to give us money, please go to patreon.com/notsafe. Right now, we are specifically fundraising for some better technology, and actually, for me, a desk setup that won't physically hurt my body, because my body is
including a light-up gaming computer. And
right? Definitely. No, what I really want is one of those reclining desks so that I can like actually lean back on my really bad pain days, and it won't, keep me from contributing to the pod and participating. And that is what we're working on getting. For me right now, it's extremely expensive. Please consider giving us your money. For those who already give us money, thank you so much. We love you. You're the best. The people who always show up for our streams, we love you too. We love everybody except for, I guess, like the handful of people we talk shit about today. And, we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.